I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock, CMAU. All right, I hope everybody had a good summer and ready to get back into the swing of things again. So we're off. Are there any public comments? If not, we'll move on to presentation, emergency operation plan. Paul, is that you?
No, Vic Milani, he has been doing, Vic Milani is part of the school safety team at MAU, but he is doing school safety plans. He's the school safety liaison for the SBSU. He's been meeting with all the principals to draft the safety plans for each school. Victor, I don't know if everyone knows you. I know we introduced you at the SU. Maybe start with a brief intro of you and then what you've been doing while you're qualified to do these safety plans for us.
Thank you. Get this, do we have the projector on?
I'm not sure. Is Tim?
Right here.
Somebody's here.
Yep.
There we go.
Well, thank you for inviting me this evening to talk.
Victor, they're going to want you to go to the microphone so the people at home can hear you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me this evening to talk to you a little bit about safety initiatives, certainly in Mount Anthony Union District, but certainly as Mr. Culkeen mentioned, we've been very active SVSU-wide. First of all, I'd like to publicly acknowledge our superintendent, who not only realizes how important it is to deliver quality education is our mission, but also realizes that utmost in the mind of any parent, any grandparent, is that we deliver that education in a safe environment. So this evening, what I'd like to do is just give you an overview of some of the safety initiatives that we have in place, and then tell you a little bit more specifics related to the emergency operation plan that we've initiated in various schools. So if I can approach here, if we take a look up at the first slide here, certainly my responsibilities as outlined by the superintendent were to, by the 1st of September, to have emergency operation plans in place in every school district-wide. So we began our work very early this year in February and March. We began to meet with principals and talk about how we're going to develop and design these plans throughout the district. So each school has a safety committee that the principal is designated, various members to serve on that committee. Most of the safety committees include administrators, it may be counselors, it may be clinicians, it may be the nurse. And together we strategize and design and develop what we believe to be an emergency operations plan for that particular school. In addition to that, what we've done this year, for the first time to my knowledge, is we've done a safety assessment of all the schools. And the three areas that we began to concentrate on this year were the telephone systems, the entryways, and video monitoring in the schools if it existed. And we certainly surveyed those areas. We reviewed those with the administrators and with the safety team, and we came up with recommendations. Were they not in place? Certainly, we're taking plans to implement these types of security measures over the course of time, maybe in phases, but certainly we wanted to make sure that our schools are safe as far as being locked, the perimeters secured, and also a telephone system that would serve the needs of the faculty, staff, and students to ensure a safe environment. I've been attending lockdowns and various evacuation type events at schools throughout the district to critique and evaluate. We have a debriefing after each of these events. We sit down and talk about were there any issues, how could we improve these drills to make them more realistic in the event that we should have a real emergency situation. We continue to do that throughout the year. We've also attended various trainings as far as school safety. The superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and myself, just this past week, went to a training in Rutland on public information officer training, where we got training on what types of measures the public information officer should consider in the event of an emergency. Tomorrow, we have 30 administrators from across the district, in addition to personnel from central office, attending a training on incident command. So that will, again, technically, every principal is the incident commander of his or her school. In the event of an emergency, I would respond to that school, work with the incident commander, and confer and collaborate with the superintendent regarding any public statements to be made. So we'll learn more about that in its incident command training tomorrow. In addition, next week, the liaison to the Agency of Education, a gentleman by the name of Rob Evans, is visiting with us for the day. I've met with him several times. He has a copy of our emergency plan. He was very complimentary as to the work we've done district-wide. He'll be spending the day with us, touring schools and meeting with administrators and myself to review the emergency operation plans. Okay. Here we are, we're up again. Okay. So this is what we've been doing now as far as the plans themselves. We've been developing memorandums of understanding with various community partners. These community partners would assist us and work and collaborate with us in the event of an emergency. Let me just grab my clicker here. So what essentially should an emergency plan include? What's the scope and objective of an emergency operation plan? Well, as I mentioned before, parents have certainly high regard for school systems where they send their children. And they hope and they trust us to be able to keep their children safe throughout the school day and provide education in a safe learning environment. That's an awesome responsibility, and we don't take that very lightly. And again, I'm so pleased that our superintendent has been proactive in initiating this undertaking so that we can be ahead of the curve here. And we can develop these plans and have them in place and feel confident that we've done everything we can to ensure the safety of our school communities. We've learned many lessons as far as developing emergency plans over the years, unfortunately, by reviewing tragic events that occurred across the country, whether it be active shooters, whether it be incidents of weather-related emergencies. Certainly, we review these, and again, we learn, and we continue to modify and evolve and develop these plans based on our experiences from, unfortunately, other situations. An emergency operation plan gives the school personnel some direction prior to the response of the responders, whether it be the police, the fire, the medical personnel to the school. So at least our personnel in those minutes that it's going to take for those type of first responders to arrive on scene, our faculty, our staff, will have some direction in what they should be doing. And we want to provide them training through these emergency operation plans. And I'll be visiting each school within the district within the first month of school and reviewing the emergency operations plan with each school's faculty and staff to explain to them their role and why we've developed this specific plan. We have different sites that would be off campus that might be necessary to respond to in the event of a crisis within the building or danger in the building or around the building. So these stage 3 evacuation sites, as we refer to them as, really is an off-site campus whereby this is where we would bring our students, faculty, and staff, and then make arrangements to dismiss them from that particular location. Each faculty and staff member has a role to play in such an emergency, and they have to know specifically what we would ask them to do and why. The community partners, the police and the fire have collaborated with us. They know what to expect of us, and we know what to expect of them should a crisis occur. And that's really important to have this open line of communication between the school and the community partners. So this kind of gives you an overview of why it's so important to have these plans. Certainly, they're dynamic, they're never static. Certainly, we're going to be changing personnel as we learn more and more, as I say, from reviewing situations that have occurred across the country. Certainly, we might make some modifications in individual plans, but again, we'll do that based on knowledge that we acquired from other situations. When we look at school-related threats and hazards, we can group them into 4 major categories. And you can see the 4 headings there: natural hazards, technological hazards, biological hazards, and adversarial, incidental, human-caused threats. Of the 4, obviously the one that receives most attention and the one we're most concerned about is obviously the active shooter. And that certainly is in the 4th column. But although that's important, and although we certainly want to be prepared for that, we don't want to minimize the fact that we have 3 other categories of threats and hazards that we have to address. And what we've done in each school, we've prioritized what's the risk that any of these events would occur in a school. According to state guidelines, if that risk is either medium or high, we have to address it with a protocol. If it's a low-risk type of threat or hazard, we don't have to have a specific protocol to address that. So what we see here is what I mean by a protocol. Here are some threat and hazard-specific annexes that we've grouped together because the protocol would be the same. Essentially, it would be an early release. So we have types of activity that would occur before the event, during the event, and after the event. And so again, in the case of each of these threats and hazards, we would have a protocol to follow that the faculty and staff would be aware of. It would be included in their emergency operation plan. So in a crisis, it would be very simple for the incident commander to go to their specific plan and say, wow, this is exactly what we've got to do. So this is our objective, to have these plans in place. We've met that objective. Well, as I say, we'll be educating faculty and staff the first month of school. So again, now it's just moving forward, keeping current by attending trainings, and again, continuing to evaluate each of these plans and make modifications where necessary. So if there's any questions on it, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I guess we have fire drills in schools today. Are you planning to have any type of drills for some of these activities that you're talking about? So, because the administrators and the people will know what to do. Because students of all ages seem to want to do their own thing when they panic.
Mm-hmm.
So are we planning to train them as well?
Thank you for that question. When we talk about fire drills, that's called a stage 1 event. And by statute, we have to 6 times a year, every other month, do a stage 1 event. In the first month of school, we have to do what's called a stage 1 and a lockdown. So we've been practicing stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 and lockdowns continually throughout the year with students and staff. Let me just give you a quick definition on those other types of evacuation events. So stage 1 is a fire drill. 6 times a year, we do that. The lockdown is the event where we have possibly an adversarial shooter. What we do is we obviously have the teachers lock down the rooms, they put down the window shades, they shut the lights, and they move the students into what we call a refuge area in the room. That's an area that we've designated as a safe spot. Obviously, they remain in that room until they're either released by, if it's a drill, by an administrator, but in a real situation, by law enforcement. They're the only ones that would go into that room and release them. That occurs 6 times a year. Stage 2 is a prolonged evacuation on site. So maybe there is a grease fire in the kitchen. It's going to take 45 minutes. What we want to do is to account for all persons present. We don't want to leave them in the same fire drill formation. We want to move them to an area on campus where we can account for all persons present. We can get a more accurate attendance count. And finally, the stage 3 is the off-site evacuation. That's when we must leave the building. Every school has an off-site designation. For example, in the high school, it's going to be the Bennington Fire Department. In the middle school now, it's going to be the new highway barn down at Baldwin Road. So every school has that. We've made provisions for every faculty and staff member to have a role, and we will practice that with faculty and staff first, probably, because we put our students into the equation. It gets far more complex when we're moving 1,000 students out of the high school or 600 out of the middle school. So we're going to ask the administration to, on an in-service day, we'll practice it just with faculty and staff, and maybe next year we bring in students once the faculty and staff are comfortable with it. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Good.
Thank you very much, Vic.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Very good. I just read something. I had asked Vic to make a little statement about who he is, so we know. So it's a little odd to do it backwards, but I'd like to. I think this would reassure some of you on the work that Nick has done. I have a little bio here on Victor. So Victor is a law enforcement professional with 29 years of experience. So he may be working at MAU now as part of our safety team, but he began his law enforcement career with the New York City Police Department while completing his PhD in forensic biology at New York University. He next accepted a position as a deputy chief of the Massachusetts Municipal Police Department, where he served for 2 years prior to being promoted to chief, a rank he held for the next 17 years. His final years of law enforcement service was as commandant of the Western Massachusetts Police Academy at Agawam for 9 years. In this role, he was responsible for the training in excess of 500 police recruits for service in police departments throughout Western Massachusetts. Therefore, throughout his career, he has taught numerous courses at both the undergraduate and graduate level at Bay State University as a professor of criminal justice and forensic science. So he was being a little modest in the beginning. I think that we are lucky to have somebody of his caliber leading this for our district. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much. Another thing is, those of you who visit the high school, you'll often see Vic standing in the corridors and keeping an eye on things just to be sure that everything is in order. And we appreciate that, Vic. All right, we can move on then. What I'd like to do, if there are no objections, is to move the consent agenda up. Tim has another arrangement he'd like to be able to attend. Does anybody have a problem with that? Motion then for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on any of the items within that? Tim, would you like to just give a very brief account of the coaches and what's taken place, particularly with the football coach?
Sure. I actually, about a month ago, I submitted to central office our fall coaching nominations. And with the resignation of our head football coach, I'm sure most of you know that John Martin has accepted a PE position at Queensbury District, and so we will be losing him as head coach. And Mr. Payne will be touching on that because he's also a PE teacher here at the middle school. But with that, there was a fairly good dominoes effect that happened with our coaching staff. So I did have fair warning that we would be leaving pending a approval or certification in New York. So I was able to put in place a process to have a coach ready if the decision was finalized. So in your packet, after speaking with all of the coaches on staff of the football program, asking if any of them were interested in the head coaching position, unanimously they put forward Chad Gordon, as their selection for head football coach. Chad has been JV coach and assistant football coach on staff for 9 years. He's a teacher at the high school. He's paid his dues, and most importantly, he's really excited to take on this venture. So that is who I'm putting forth. The understanding would be, without the time to open up the position, obviously it's a very important position in our community. With proper time, I would like to open that position. So all coaching positions are one-year positions, so when the season is over, we'll go through our evaluation process, and if we feel we need to open that position for the following year, that would be the plan.
Great.
Also in the packet, with Chad moving to the varsity position, that opened up an assistant coaching position. We posted it in the district. I received one letter of interest, and that was from Marcus Haas, the varsity basketball coach, who has extensive football experience playing and coaching. So we were excited to have him on board. So that was also in the nomination. We also had 2 middle school football coaches who, in the past year, are not coming back. So just in the past month, there are 2 nominations for middle school football.
Very good. Does anybody have any further questions on any of the nominations that are included in the consent agenda? If not, then I'll
This
ask.
would be the modified one, right? Because I had 2. It was one, I guess, and then it was one that modified. It was one that had Marcus in it as a long-term sub. Which one is that?
The long-term sub is different. This is the coaching position.
This is
He's also been
Right,
appointed.
that was in the nomination. Then the next one, it didn't have it in there, so I was trying to,
Okay,
that's just the sub list. I mean, the coaches list by itself, not the nomination list.
right.
Is that what you?
Yeah, that is.
Okay.
That's. Are there any other questions on the consent agenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? I'd also like to bring to your attention something about the Storm football team. Tim, could you just do that?
As most of you are aware, it was brought up at a board meeting over the summer. Our policy regarding high school Spinelli Field, the lighting field there, is that once our fall season starts with varsity football, basketball, soccer games, we do not allow people to use the field just because of overuse. So we did agree to allow the Storm football team to play 1 game on Spinelli Field, which would be coming up a week from Saturday, August 26th. And we also, as a trial, allowed them to play a game which would have been last Saturday on the middle school field, just to see how that went. Their opponent, their season forward, they didn't know about it until 3 days before the game. They just didn't have the participation numbers, the team forward. They had already presented us with the certificate of liability for the use of both fields, the payment of the expenses. And I realized that I'm throwing this out here because I understand we do have the policy of nothing between seasons, but under these circumstances, I would like to see the board approve the Storm being able to make that game up. They're requesting the last Saturday in September. We have a middle school football game that morning at 10. We'd like to play at 4 o'clock. The field would already be lined, be painted. Again, I would just like to make this one-time exception to see if this would be okay. And we'll see how it goes, and then we'll revisit it if all goes well. And I have the support of Paul Dancero on this, and so now I'm here for.
Does anybody have any questions of Tim on this? And Tim, would you just phrase a motion so that the board can act on it?
The motion would be that the game that was canceled, the Southern Vermont Storm football game that was canceled on Saturday, August 12th, they would like to reschedule for Saturday, September 30th at 4 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions or noes? Very good, we can move on then. Tim, is there anything else?
No, the other thing I was gonna add about the positions is there's still one position left for me to fill, and that is the middle school athletic coordinator. The person here at the middle school, we try to hire either a PE teacher or a faculty person here at the middle school who will be the game administrator at the winter games, and they also collect and pass out all the equipment for our middle school teams because it's all stored here. John Martin was the person in that position, so in fairness, I wanted to wait till the new PE teacher was filled, and then I would open that up. I mean, it has been posted, but again, our first preference is to have somebody here at the middle school who knows the kids, knows the coaches, and I'm sure, we'll get a good candidate.
That's good, just keep us informed, and I'm sure Tim Payne will also keep us informed. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Tim? We can move on then to the finance section of the agenda. The treasurer's report, we need a motion to accept it.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any questions?
Both reports,
Excuse me?
both reports.
We got treasure and budget status.
Well, the budget status report doesn't really need action.
It's June and July.
Oh, June and July, okay,
July.
okay, right. For both June and July. Do we have that still motion in a second? Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. We can then go down to personnel. The reason that we had that, we have approximately 15 members of our staff that are not on contract. They are not in a regular bargaining unit, and they are off contract. At the time we were putting together the budget, as in most other districts, we allowed 3%, as we did pretty much across the board, for the raises for those people. My understanding is that other districts have already approved this for their non-contractual employees, a 3% increase. Jim, is that, am I?
Pownell did earlier tonight. Woodford, Shaftesbury, and Bennington have also done 3%.
So that we put on that we cut executive session. If someone had a real problem with it or would like to discuss it, it should be done in executive session. If not, I'd just like to approve the 3% raise for
I
those.
move that we approve the 3%
I'll second that.
for the off-contract.
Very good. It is in the budget. Do we have any questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Policy. Leon, do you want to handle that?
We have two policies on the books to look at tonight. That was one, and that was transportation, and this is up for warning. And the transportation changes that were made in there were associated with the contract negotiation plus a language that had to be dealt with in terms of Pownell not having their own bus services to carry students back and forth from school, but for Pownell to also keep a bus so that they can use it for field trips. And then information was moved out of the body into administrative regs. So you saw a lot of movement in that policy, and that's what was in there.
Do you want to vote on that and then move on to the other one?
Well, yes, that would be great if you,
Nelson?
Yeah, I know that Pownell was the one that requested what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but this basically allowed, what happened before is a lot of the schools, when they try to do a field trip, they had to schedule it with the busing company that does the trips, and sometimes they couldn't get the block of time they needed. So Pownell has decided to keep a bus, but if the other schools were to have a small minivan or something for small groups, it also enables them to do the same thing, so that they don't have to rely on a bus company when they go on a field trip, that they can actually schedule their field trips and make these trips more possible for the kids more often. That's why Pownell went after it.
On that, is Pownell responsible for keeping those buses to the standard that regular school buses are held?
Yeah,
They're
they
still
have-
subject to inspection.
yeah,
Okay, and drivers and things. Very good,
yeah, same requirements.
very good. Are there any other questions on that?
I just wanted to point out,
Yep.
well, one substantive thing, and the other, the two things that I was most cognizant of, is the section 1, we just changed the wording so it's positive rather than negative. And the other is that in terms of the maximum walking distance for the transportation. There's a substantive change there that it's going to be the superintendent that will be determining that versus the school boards of each district themselves.
All right, that was moved in the administrative regs section.
I really can't answer that. Jim, can you answer that?
I don't know that there was a question, he was just talking about the changes
No, I'm
that were
saying
made.
with the
Yeah, I'm just-
That's all.
I'm
These are
pointing out-
changes
yeah.
that I didn't really speak
Yeah.
in detail on, is that,
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Section 5 is fairly substantive because it changes it to the superintendent from the district.
For my own information, are the distance from, the walking distance the same for all the districts?
that is a substance in the administrative regs for the superintendent to look at with the school district in relation to setting that. So that shouldn't be an item of discussion when we talk about administrative regs unless you got something specifically associated with that.
Okay, let's have a motion then to accept or to warn the
Yeah.
policy.
So move. Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions or noes? Very good. We can move on to another one, family and medical leave.
Yeah, policy 4327 is the family medical leave, and this was a lengthy policy, and what we started to do here, there was some things that was being requested by HR or by the association, and that might have been in conflict with what we were doing in terms of the Medical Leave Act. And so we decided to put a statement in there indicating that the contract, as long as the amount of time meets the requirements of the law and is subject to be approved by the association, if they bring up a change, we can do that. And most of all the other material in there went either to administrative regs or went directly to the law as it was written so that we wouldn't be tinkering around with it. So that's why you see a lot of movement in that.
The negotiation committee could spend a good deal of time working on family leave and these sort of things. For you, is the contract in agreement with this?
Yes, this makes everything right for what we want.
Okay, we have a motion?
So move.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Can move on then to administrator's report. Tim?
Thank you. I'm going to be presenting Ms. Cresto's report this evening too, so you want me to start in any particular order?
No, whatever.
All right. I'll start with high school. For those of you who don't start your day with a banner like Mr. Payne, there was a nice article this morning, Bridging the Grade Gap. A story about the Summer Bridges program that assists students who struggle at the middle school with their transition to the high school. With regards to the 20 years experience of Danny and Rick Crozier, we've been working with incoming 9th grade students with an intensive summer program designed to build high school readiness. It was a nice article. It had several students speaking to the success from that program and their appreciation. So I encourage folks to check that article out as well. A reminder that freshman family orientation is August 23rd, which I believe is next Wednesday, from 6 to 8:30 p.m. We encourage all families of our incoming 9th grade class to attend freshman family orientation. All right. Thanks, sir. This will be an evening for parents and students to get more information about the high school experience and all opportunities available at Mount Anthony Union High School. Topics include athletics, co-curricular activities, school counseling, guidance services, homework, credits, student health, and well-being. There will be a panel discussion of students from the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade on hand to talk to students. We hope to see you there. Locker days at the high school are scheduled for August 24th and 25th, and this provides all students the opportunity to get their locker assignment before the first day of school and have their ID taken. The locker day schedule was mailed at the end of last week to every student. Please note specific times assigned for specific classes. Please come during your scheduled time. If you are unable to attend at those times, you will be assigned a locker on the first day of school. A reminder for all families that Tuesday, September 5th is the first day of school at the high school, but that is for 9th graders only. Students in the grades 10, 11, and 12 will start school on Wednesday, September 6th. Buses will be running on both of those days. From the middle school, summer packets were mailed home last week. They should have arrived at students' homes. We certainly have seen an uptick in phone calls from parents asking for clarifications. If you have not received a mailing yet, please give us a call at school. We can help you out with that. The office is open every day from 9 to 2, so you just want to call the main office and we can help you out with that. Next week, which Monday is August 21st, we are inviting students and families to visit the middle school, especially for new students. We want to encourage you to bring your schedule. We'll give you a map. We encourage students to walk around the building, go through their schedule. We find that kids really appreciate that. Kind of takes a little bit of the guessing out of it on the first day. For parents and families who are not able to attend from 9 to 2, those are working hours, on Tuesday, the 22nd, we will open the building from 5 to 7. There'll be staff available for you, so please come and visit us as well if that schedule works better for you and your family. First day of school for students, all students at the middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8. We don't have a deferred program for the 8th graders, although they'd like to see that. Our first day is Tuesday, September 5th. We encourage and invite families who'd like to visit their students at lunch on that first day of school to please join us. We just ask that you check your schedule because you want to make sure that you visit during the lunchtime that your student will be visiting. We've had that happen before, and we welcome everybody. Just encourage folks to come into the building and sign in with us so we can keep a good guest list. Also, the middle school open house has been scheduled for Wednesday, September 13th from 6:30 to 8:30. We're going to be starting in the school cafeteria. There will be more reminders of that event as we get closer to that, but just for the planners out there, September 13th. And then lastly, I wanted to thank staff and students who journeyed to Castleton yesterday. The college was very nice to host a symposium for the last 2 days. Schools from around the state, teachers from around the state coming together and talking about personalized learning plans and proficiency-based learning, what different schools are doing and what different schools are going to be working on in the coming year. Mount Anthony was well represented by current 7th, 8th, and 9th graders who did a very nice presentation about personalized learning plans. We got kudos from agency and other schools, so I really appreciate the kids hanging out. We had families journey up with that. It was a great time to meet with parents as well. Students stayed there the whole day. We also had staff presenting at those at the symposium, and it was nice to see teachers out in front of their colleagues sharing their experiences. We have a lot of things to continue to work on as we go forward. Overall, the event was very positive, and just want to be clear that there were middle school and high school staff in attendance, so both schools were very much involved in the event.
Thank you.
That's it.
Any questions for Tim? Tim, in a future meeting, I would be curious as to how successful the Mosaic program was and how the horticultural program was this summer, just to keep us informed as to how it's doing and those people that are participating, how many and all that kind of stuff in the future.
Absolutely.
Very good, thank you.
So
Yeah.
the first day of school celebration for up here, is that the same for the high school, or we're not going to do anything for the high school at the same, on that
Well, they
same
have
day?
that freshman day, which is
So that's
freshman
First day
day.
of school.
The first day of school is the 5th, I think, for them, and then the
Right.
other students will come in the 6th.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
so we just separated them, yeah, okay.
Okay. And I'm not sure, is the CDC on the same?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Jim, are you going to talk about the possible delay of schools?
I will in my report.
Okay. All right, well, student representative, we'll wait till we have one. We go down to the superintendent's report.
So Jim asked if I was going to talk about the opening of school. You heard the report from the principal of the middle school. The school is going to open, first days for staff is August 30th, and for all students at the middle school, it's September 5th, and just for 9th graders, September 5th, and then all other high school students on September 6th. You may have heard that we are experiencing some issues in Shaftesbury and in Bennington that may impact the opening of school. These have to be dealt with, in my opinion, before school can open. It's a ventilation project at Shaftesbury that encountered asbestos on piping. Once the ceiling was removed, the asbestos has to be removed. I mean, we had the option of putting the ceiling back and leaving it there. I don't think that would be something that parents would have, or the community would have felt comfortable with. It's in the way of the contractor putting the ventilation system. We did get permission that we can leave the ceilings down for the start of the school year. Emergency exit lights have to be illuminated, lighting has to be there, and some sealing of penetrations for smoke have to be sealed. So that will allow the project to continue during the school year, nights and weekends. But the asbestos has to be removed before the students go back. That is not supposed to happen until August 24th if all permits come back from the state on time. Contractors saying 5 to 7 days, maybe quicker. He probably dreads every time Renee calls him to ask that question. But it could impact the opening of the school in Shaftesbury. Bennington Elementary schools, as you know, all have a major renovation project going on this summer for lighting, heating, ventilating. My understanding is Monument and Bennington Elementary are pretty much on schedule. Molly Stark, not so much. We have a facilities meeting with the Bennington School District tomorrow. Told Molly Stark, see progress. Contractor is still telling me that they are on schedule. But even if it is done in time for school, unlike Shaftesbury, the classrooms are pretty much intact. The hallways aren't. All the elementary schools, the classrooms are not intact. Everything needs to be cleaned, unpacked, put back, and prepared for the school year. So why do I mention this at an MAU meeting? Because one of the questions I'm getting, if I delay the opening of school, do I delay it for everyone? The answer you're hearing from me tonight is no, I will not delay the opening for everyone. So Pownell, Woodford, middle school, high school will open as scheduled, and if there are any schools that cannot open, we'll do a delayed opening there. We have flexibility of 5 days in the schedule right now that we could eliminate for our students at the schools that don't open. Vermont law requires 175 student days. We have 180 student days scheduled. So I'm hoping that it won't come to that. I realize the impact. One thing that was reminded of me that some families may have impact if the high school is in school and in session and the elementary schools aren't. It might have some childcare issues. In my conversations with the principal was that that's something that we can work out individually with counselors and request from families if that is the case. But again, I'm hoping that we don't need it. It's still too early to tell, yet I know that we're bumping up against a deadline that parents want to know, need to know. Just here to tell you that right now we don't know. And we are monitoring it pretty much daily. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, because it could impact the future of this committee and this school system, is Act 46. The SVSU Act 46 Study Committee has finished the Articles of Agreement. They have sent those articles, our consultant Dan French has sent them on to our attorney and to the Agency of Education for review to be placed on, I believe, the September agenda of the State Board. And I could be off on that, it could actually end up in October. We are looking at scheduling a public vote October 10th, so that would be a ballot vote in all towns. But before that can happen, I have to get warned. Individual school boards all have to have special meetings to take the vote whether they want to warn them. And I can't do that yet until I get the draft of the ballot language back from our attorney. We'll take the Article of Confederation, Article of Agreement, and weave that into the ballot question along with, I know Renee sent off information today of what our warnings and ballots look like for budget approval. That's all needed too. So many of you are probably more familiar with this than I am. You know that there's that 45, 30-day window on an election, so we can't warn it any earlier than 45 days before October 10th and no later than 30 days. So that would be, September 10th is the drop dead deadline for us, and we don't want to go that far because we still have to get it to the banner, and the town clerks would be frantic if we waited then. So we were hoping to do very similar to how we did last night. We did the approval of the teacher's contract in a carousel meeting, do a carousel meeting of all the boards to hear the presentation jointly on Act 46 from the Act 46 committee, then go around the room with each individual board, take their vote on whether they want it. We had given thought to doing that next Wednesday prior to the SVSU meeting, but I don't think we're going to have the necessary paperwork to do that, so we're probably looking at the following week. October 10th was picked because it's the same date that the town, Bennington and North Bennington are doing their sewer improvement bond. So rather than have the town clerks have to run 2 elections, we could do it on the same ballot of that day. It makes sense to us. They're having their meeting August 28th to warn their ballot. So we're kind of shooting for staying around that same date, possibly going to Wednesday, August 30th for that joint meeting of all boards. It's the 5th Wednesday of the month, so there are no scheduled board meetings. This is a very compressed, tight schedule. It seems like we're rushing. I remind everyone that we've been doing this for close to 2 years. And why now? November 30th is really the deadline for the tax incentives. And so we could have this election in November, but the 30-day recall provision on the election could kick in, so we really shouldn't do it any later than October 30th. And when we're in October, then it was decided by the Act 46 committee, then why not do it in that October 10th date rather than having 2 town-wide elections in October. So that's the update on that. And the other thing that came to light at the Act 46 committee, and you could hear the kind of the air come out of the room for a minute as everyone said, dawned on them that also on that ballot for October 10th has to be the formation of that new school board. So anyone who wants to run for that new school board has to submit papers and time to be on that. So we're literally developing this day by day, so I don't have how that mechanism is going to work yet. It's in the Articles of Agreement, the size of the board, and what towns are appointed, very similar to how it is here at Mount Anthony. That's it.
Good. Any questions for Jim, Leon?
Well, I just got one thing that Jim mentioned, the teachers in the Act 46, but we also have a ESP contract in which we have agreed, the members of the negotiating team have both all agreed, and we have that now with the leaders, part of our group, to try to make sure that the language is massaged so that we bring that back. And you'll be scheduling a carousel meeting to go through that as well.
And we understand the ESP employees will be scheduling a ratification vote on their first day of returning to school.
All right, any questions, any other questions for Jim?
Right here. Did North Bennington agree to hold a vote? Without that, all the rest of it's null and void anyway.
That we have had discussions, or the chair of the Act 46 said to me that I believe that they are committed if we can demonstrate that it is required of them to hold that vote.
But they don't have to though, right?
No one has to.
Okay.
You know, and anybody who, if my understanding, to go a little further, a community is either necessary or advisable. So the Act 46 committee decided that without Bennington, this wouldn't work. So Bennington is necessary. Everyone else has been advisable. What's the difference? If Bennington votes it down, the community votes it down, it's dead. Anybody who votes it down that's advisable, it moves forward as long as the majority members of Mount Anthony had voted to move forward. But a vote has to take place.
Yeah.
So each town will vote, though?
We'll have a ballot vote on October 10th, if their individual school board votes to want it. So that's the, what Fran is referring to. If the North Bennington Prudential Committee decides that they don't want to warn and have the vote, we're in a, but they've indicated that they are willing to consider that, and I thank them for that.
And what happens, what percentage of those people voting from those districts have to pass? Which district, how many districts have to pass before it can move forward?
The majority of the Mount Anthony districts, so that would.
3.
Yeah.
3.
So if 3 say no, it would be dead.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. My report is very short. I'd like to thank Leon for taking over some of my duties when I was away. Thank you, Leon. I appreciate it. It makes it much easier to move on. We need a motion to go into executive session on a personnel matter that referred to VSA Section 313A3.
So moved.
And a second?
We will return to possibly take action.
Right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, here, I'll make a motion to go out of executive session.
That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are in open session then.
And I'll make a motion. I move the board to approve the separation agreement for Glenda Cresto and authorize the board chair to sign the agreement on behalf of the board.
I'll second it.
Are there any questions or concerns on that? Jim, would you like to speak to that?
Statement I'd like to say is that the board and Ms. Cresto have jointly agreed that the future path of Mount Anthony Union High School requires different leadership to move forward. The board appreciates Ms. Cresto's leadership the past 2 years and her commitment to student achievement and wish her well in her future endeavors.
Any other comments? I'll ask then for a vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Abstentions? Richard, did you get the count?
Did I get the count?
Yes.
Yes, Fran was the only one who voted against.
Very good. We have, very good. Are there any other issues that we should?
I'd like to ask the board to make a motion to appoint Laura Boudreau as the acting principal of Mount Anthony Union High School.
So moved.
Would you like to make the motion?
That's what I'm moving, the motion to elect appoint Laura Woodrow as the acting principal of Mount Anthony Union High School.
Very
for the
good.
time.
Excuse me just one
Second.
No.
All right. Do I have a second to that?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that issue? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Are there any other business to be brought before this board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.